Hello everyone, welcome to Voice of Finance. Today we are talking with Peter McKenzie, Corporate Director of Anticipa Real Estate.
Yes, I'm the Corporate Director of Anticipa Real Estate, which is a real estate company based here in Spain. We're based in Barcelona. Actually, we're owned by Blackstone, the private equity firm. We have around 30,000 properties that we manage in Spain. So I've been with this company for around 6 years. And previous to that, I also worked for another private equity firm called Apollo. And prior to that, I worked for 20 years at Citigroup. So in various locations through Spain, the UK, Portugal. So I've quite a long period where I've been a CFO, also a COO, and now I do various roles, which we're going to talk about, I think, a bit. Belén.
Peter, that's great experience. That's a lot of learning that you bring onto the table out of those years. I know that you have a point of view on how to really rock the CFO position, how to be a rock star in such a role that is getting more and more importance in companies. 7 elements that I know you have in mind. Could you share them with us, those 7?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I think it's a great time to be a CFO. That's the first thing I'd say. You know, the time we're living compared to maybe 15, 20 years ago when the CFO had a very, contained role, rather a back office role. I think today the CFO has a very expanded role. It's a very exciting time to be a CFO. But there's a big difference between just being a CFO and being a rock star CFO. So I've come up with 7 words, 7 C's that I think capture the essence of what is a rock star CFO, and we can go through those. The first is being cross-functional, and we'll go into detail what that means later, but having more than just the basic function of a CFO. The second one is being a change master, being able to manage change and lead change in organizations. The third one is being able to communicate really well. Absolutely vital that the CFO is able to communicate with stakeholders, with the shareholders, the customers and clients really, really well. Vital skill. The next one is continuously learning, continuously adapting, because in today's world you have to be constantly reinventing yourself, even as a CFO. The fifth one is being a cultural champion. Also vital in this world where now we're looking at diversity, inclusion, the environment, the ECG, all these type of things. I think the CFO has to lead that. And then probably the most important ones for me are finally sort of the character. The 6 C is character, charisma. To be a rock star, you have to have charisma, and you have to be able to explain and express your passion for what you're doing. So that's the number 6. And the number 7 is a pet one for me, which is courage. To be courageous, to really lead, certainly through difficult times or challenging times, as we've just had with the pandemic. You have to be courageous to be able to lead your function and be a key member of the management team in any place that you're working.
But Peter, you are describing like 7 really complete, holistic type of characteristics. It's a demanding role to be a rock star CFO. I would like to explore a bit more in each of those. The first one you have mentioned, cross-functional. If we go cross-functional, where it lands our core functional knowledge. Many CFOs, many finance departments feel very comfortable in their space. What about that? We have to abandon it. How do you see it?
No, very important point, because to be a rock star CFO, Belén, first you have to be a CFO. So I'm taking it as granted that whoever comes into trying to go to the next level already has the basic skills and has the foundation knowledge to be a CFO. So it's vitally important that you start, you know how to balance the books, read balance sheets, project cash flows, all of the very basic parts of being a CFO. That's where you start. So I would never expect someone to come in from a director of marketing to be a rock star CFO. You have to have done your years of experience, and anyone that's been in finance knows it's a long grind to become a CFO. So I take that as granted, right? So it's moving from there, from this basic finance function CFO to the next level. And in fact, it's true that you do have to almost step away from part of your core function. That's your comfort zone. I believe you have to step away from that. You have to be competent and you have to be aware of those functions, but that's something that you can probably delegate more with a controller, and you can move into these cross-functional areas that are becoming more and more important for the CFO today.
You've mentioned very rightly moving out from the comfort zone. Out of those 7 characteristics or 7 skills to rock, which ones do you think that are so important and maybe so not that much close to the natural space of a CFO that need special attention? Which would be the ones you would say, if you have to choose a couple, focus on?
Yeah, I mean, if we go to the space that a lot of CFOs are moving in today, I would say that probably it's tech. It's IT and technology. So in my case, for example, I'm now a corporate director. That's my title. So I have various functions apart from finance. I also look after operations, obviously tax as well, but also IT. I think it's a very natural thing that CFOs are moving into the tech space for a couple of reasons. One, as companies move into digital, it's a huge CapEx spend. So there's an obvious, looking at the return on investment, looking at the strategy going forward. The CFO is right in the middle of the numbers, the investment, vital part of the strategy of the company. But the second thing I would say is that the CFO, the role of finance is changing somewhat, because rather than being backward looking and reporting numbers, it's now very much being on top of the numbers as they occur, right, in real time. So big data, this has been the theme that's been spoken about for many years. But I think since the pandemic, we're really seeing big data being used, real-time data being used across society. So in fact, The Economist last week had a whole thing about the real-time data revolution. It's on the front cover of The Economist, talking about how even governments now, rather than relying on data that's being produced, GDP and unemployment data, they're looking at restaurant bookings, flight bookings. They're looking at data real time to see what's going on. The COVID data itself was real time. Every day we had an update, right? So, in terms of finance, it's the same necessity. Companies need to have data real time. So the CFO needs to be able to provide that data, interpret that data, have the the firepower in terms of technology to produce that data warehouses, data lakes, understand all of tech to be able to produce the numbers real time, project the numbers real time as well. So that's a completely different skill to closing the books and waiting for X number of days and reporting balance sheets. So you have to be right in the middle of tech. So for me, it was a long answer to a short question. I think IT and the CFO are roles that are coming closer and closer together. I think it's a challenge for a CFO because it's a very different space.
Excellent. And you've mentioned data and how this influences on the role of finance in the interpretation, in bringing it to life. How can finance really, and CFO bring the finance function to really add that value? How skills that you have mentioned, like communication and driving the change, could be acted on from the CFO?
Yeah, I mean, I think my second point was change management, being a change champion. So the CFO, obviously this is a challenge, not just for the CFO, but the finance function itself. So the CFO has to lead that change within the organisation, within their own organisation. So there's a lot of work to be done within the finance area to bring in the right skill sets as well, because a lot of the people that we hire now are far more techie than the traditional accountant in the past. So there's a whole, that management of change, having people obviously don't like change. So you have to convince them that these obstacles, these problems are in fact challenges. So it's reframing the new world, bringing in the right resources to adapt the organisation to that change, and also explaining to the organisation that the CFO now has this additional role within tech. So all of that change has to be championed by the rockstar CFO. I mean, you can sit back and say, I don't want to do this, you could be a CFO. But if you want to be a rockstar CFO, this is the space where the change is happening in finance. So you have to be in the middle of it. Okay. So that's one. And I'd say, you mentioned communication. For me, communication is another vital skill for the CFO, vital. because the days of the finance director being the person, he or she sitting quietly just giving financial number updates, that's gone. The communication skills, I always say to the people I coach as CFOs, you have to work on communication, you have to work on being able to express what you're saying succinctly to all of the stakeholders, whether it be the shareholders, your private equity firm on top of you, your customers, your employees. The CFO is there, is very visible. People want to see the CFO because it's a trusted figure in the company, maybe more so than even the CEO on occasions. So communication is absolutely key to manage change, to communicate change, but to communicate in general. So for me it's a vital skill for a rock star CFO.
Yeah. It's a changing role with more responsibility, more visibility, so it takes courage, it takes charisma to execute on that role. How do you say CFOs expanding on that skill?
Yeah, well, this is another pet one for me in terms of moving from a basic CFO level to becoming someone outstanding at the role. I mean, for me, charisma and character are the very, very core of being a rock star CFO. So you have to have passion, you have to have energy, have to have zest to be able to communicate what you believe in and be believable as well. So it's really important. And these are things that can be worked on. Even for someone that's an introvert, it's a matter of working these things in, day out, communication skills, and letting people see your character to deliver, to deliver your message. On the other hand of character, I'm also a firm believer that you have to have a strong character in the sense of values. So you know, Belén, because we met discussing philosophy, Greek philosophy a few weeks ago. I'm a big fan of the Stoics. So the Stoic philosophy and their belief there are 4 virtues for a good character, and I believe a good leader. And they are wisdom, justice, temperance, and courage. So wisdom, knowing what you have to do, being wise, right? Knowing what has to be done. Justice, being fair, so being fair to your team, being fair to people in general. Temperance is being not losing your emotions. So no one wants a boss or a leader that's one day is up here, one day is down here, depressed. You want people that are able to manage their emotions. And finally, courage. So courage, vital to be able to take strong decisions and be able to lead firmly. So for me, this idea of having a strong character, being consistent, is also vital to being a strong leader. And then courage maybe just needs one little bit of expansion, because a leader without courage is nothing. Because in these changing times, you have to have the courage to take decisions, to make mistakes, to own up to your mistakes, to delegate your power, to be humble. All these things require great courage. So leaders to actually be able to advance, and rock star CFOs to be able to advance, they have to make decisions and make mistakes, and that requires putting your job on the line sometimes. But that's a vital part of making it to this level.
Yeah, I think, Peter, what we share and what you are describing is we are in a sweet moment for CFOs. We are being asked to step up into a more visible role, with a role with much more impact, but responsibility comes with some effort and with some burden, if you allow me the word. And those elements you have described, I think they are just the core. But the good news, we are being asked because we are trusted. So let's go up to the challenge. I thank you for sharing this with us. I think that there are elements like character, like courage, that might deserve a more profound conversation. Would you come with us and join in a second session, and we can go into a bit more detail into those ones?
Yes,
Would you
of
be
course.
happy?
Yeah, be very
then
happy to.
Please join us, because we will follow up on those topics. Thank you so much.